prosecution of felon gangster mafiotic negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable, the blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, with no private law experience, detested by all factions, in spite of this, solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me, this negroidic, low, mafiotic, deadly Black Frank Gelada was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position of second highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long, worse-than-a-farce Nazi court criminal trial in Nassau County Court, 1958, where dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon slut wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her anus, her conch. She repeatedly gesticulated and whispered, "I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him." Her husband's dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan, flushed-faced in repeated open sodomistic displays, stuck out his tongue, wiggling it, chuckling to her. "You hangman rope gangster felon parroting puppet scum on top playboys can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious lowly sodomistic display by the felon sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau County Court. After my worse-than-Nazi court criminal conviction, crucifixion, for years in poverty I suffered hopeless, jobless, character assassination, and isolation in this low, deadly nigger town. I was the repeat target victim of this gangster government's gangsterization and undetectable extermination attempts to shut me up forever with my secrets. Then, in December 14th to 17th, 1965, I attempted to escape this worst mongrel gangster communist country to return to the Slovenic Polish land of my forefathers. Instead, in a gangster-staged parroting puppet deadly conspiracy, I was flown from Kennedy, New York Airport at night to a small, distant St. Lawrence River estuary, snowbound small airport under the guise that I was in Warsaw, Poland. Immediately, many, many things proved this to me, including the two big white asbestos-shingled hangars with the large Braniff Airways signs on their sidewalls, in addition to the many blurted statements I solicited from the many CIA deadly gangsters, the assassins of me, the many, many parroting puppets all around me. I demanded an immediate flight back to Kennedy, New York Airport. Instead, I was held captive all night, later in chains. I refused both all food and requests I go to sleep. Then CIA police gangsters pretending to be Polish police with no identification beat me bloodily. Later, while my return trip 707 Boeing jet airliner was being serviced for my return trip, I quickly walked into the airplane and saw a CIA gangster with a small electric hairdryer type blower pumping deadly poison nerve gas smoke into secret compartments under the ashtrays in the arms of the chairs, where later I was ordered to sit in the airplane full of CIA underlings, passengers, my assassins, who giggled as they watched me dragged in chains by the airplane by the gangster CIA police gangsters. These deadly gangster CIA passengers, they pressed the frontal panel of the ashtrays in the seat arms to release the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Indubitably, all of the others deadly CIA underling gangsters aboard this staged return flight, they all had taken the top secret poison nerve gas antidote pill, immuning them from the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Deadly poison nerve gas smoke was sprayed at me from cigars, cigarettes, and even from ballpoint pens, also from the wig of a woman sitting next to me. Even the Swiss cheese type ice cubes were evaporating into poison nerve gas smoke in all of the free drinks. I got up and went to the rear of the airplane by the rear exit door with a large push-up handle. My Frankenstein brain thoughts broadcasting radio disclosed my intentions. Immediately, the loudspeakers screamed that the flight was over and that our airplane was already preparing to land at Kennedy, New York Airport. You hangman rope sneak gangster playboy scum on top know these facts are true, not only from taking part in such undetectable exterminations, but also you chicanerous, demented, felon, parroting puppet gangsters can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of all these horrible, terrifying, deadly events. When I returned home, Joseph I. Deck, my only brother and deadly felon, murderer, and assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, he beat me repeatedly, cursing me that I was not exterminated by all of the poison nerve gas smoke, and that I did the impossible in that I kept awake for 3 days and refused all food in order to prevent my sneak extermination. In accordance with the completely gangster computer god concocted and manipulated statutory laws, one of your gangster court's requisite duties is to automatically rehear my said appeal case, because it has been brought to your attention, you hangman rope gangsters, that my entire life was destroyed by you co-conspirators through the gangster government perjured and fabricated criminal conviction of me in order to fulfill the demands of your communist god, the worldwide mad deadly gangster computer god. You deadly parroting puppet felon gangsters already know that I have been and am an innocent primary victim and target for destruction and extermination because I am a menace to your gangster computer god, and that I am worse than defenseless without the gangster protection and control of the gangster Frankenstein earphone radio. I stand alone against you demented, deadly gangster parroting puppets, namely this worst gangster communist computer god-controlled gangster government. Before I'm exterminated by you hangman rope underlings, I demand a reply. October 21st, 1976. Francis E. Deck, Esquire. Addendum. I personally filed my maximum conviction appeal brief in 1961 with the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. The chief clerk, he knew me. He sneeringly grabbed my thick, strong, homemade appeal brief, and then he attempted to rip it up in desperation. The chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court ripped off the cover of my appeal brief. Miraculously, I stopped him without a deadly scene to me. Then, filing my ripped appeal brief, the felon, another co-conspirator with the 9 hangman rope gangster judges, the chief clerk, in cowardly fear, in staccato speech and gesticulation, he confessed to me, Mr. Deck, everyone is in on this one against you, even the Attorney General, namely Bobby Kennedy, younger than his very young brother Jack Kennedy, Kennedy then president, the Kennedy Playboys. Little fag Bobby was a felon, lowest, chicanerous, untouchable, parroting puppet gangster against worse than defenseless Mr. Francis E. Deck, Esquire. My quick questioning and the co-conspiring felon chief clerk explained and gave me a new and special notice form for only Mr. Francis E. Deck, Esquire, which had to be mailed to the opposition, the deadly gangster district attorney, in order to prevent the dismissal of my appeal case. Leaving quickly, I noticed in the room and hall several approaching uniformed and plainclothes, beweaponed police. Later, Joseph I. Deck, my only brother, deadly villain, murderer, and secret assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, cursed me, stating that I tricked the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court and that I got out of that death trap fast. So brainwashed from birth by the computer god threshold brainwash radio, parroting puppet gangster slave, if you believe in anything, forget kneeling to abide by the high holy law long enough to say one word of pray for me, for your only hope for a future. Footnote, remember, it is gangster U.S. Supreme Court written high holy law. I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him. To all judges, First and Second Appellate Division, Superior Court, New York City, Court of Appeals, Albany, New York, U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. I write demanding a rehearing of my worse than lowest deadly gangster police state criminal conviction, which appeal case was in your farce, deadly gangster ghetto communist, gangster computer god manipulated gangster court. Below I state some of the many reasons for said rehearing, plus all of my evidence the Attorney General chicanerously forwarded to the Bar Association Grievance Committee for prosecution of felon gangster mafiotic negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable, the blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, with no private law experience, detested by all factions, in spite of this, solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me, this negroidic, low, mafiotic, deadly Black Frank Gelada was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position of second highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long, worse than a farce Nazi court criminal trial in Nassau County Court, 1958, where dwarfed felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon slut wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip, and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her anus, her conch. She repeatedly gesticulated and whispered, "I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him." Her husband's dwarfed felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan, flushed-faced in repeated open sodomistic displays, stuck out his tongue, wiggling it, chuckling to her. You hangman rope gangster felon parroting puppet scum on top playboys can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious lowly sodomistic display by the felon sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau County Court. After my worse than Nazi court criminal conviction, crucifixion, for years in poverty I suffered hopeless, jobless, character assassination, and isolation in this low, deadly nigger town. I was the repeat target victim of this gangster government's gangsterization and undetectable extermination attempts to shut me up forever with my secrets. Then, in December 14th to 17th, 1965, I attempted to escape this worst mongrel gangster communist country to return to the Slovenic Polish land of my forefathers. Instead, in a gangster stage parroting puppet deadly conspiracy, I was flown from Kennedy, New York airport at night to a small distance St. Lawrence River estuary, snowbound small airport under the guise that I was in Warsaw, Poland. Immediately, many things proved this to me, including the two big white asbestos shingled hangars with the large Brad F. Airways signs on their sidewalls, in addition to the many blurted statements I solicited from the many CIA deadly gangsters, the assassins of me, the many parroting puppets all around me. I demanded an immediate flight back to Kennedy, New York airport. Instead, I was held captive all night later in chains. I refused both all food and requests I go to sleep. Then CIA police gangsters pretending to be Polish police with no identification beat me bloodily. Later, while my return trip 707 Boeing jet airliner was being serviced for my return trip, I quickly walked into the airplane and saw a CIA gangster with a small electric hairdryer type blower pumping deadly poison nerve gas smoke into secret compartments under the ashtrays in the arms of the chairs, where later I was ordered to sit in the airplane full of CIA underlings, passengers, my assassins, who giggled as they watched me dragged in chains by the airplane by the gangster CIA police gangsters. These deadly gangster CIA passengers, they pressed the frontal panel of the ashtrays in the seat arms to release the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Indubitably, all of the others deadly CIA underling gangsters aboard this staged return flight, they all had taken the top secret poison nerve gas antidote pill, immuning them from the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Deadly poison nerve gas smoke was sprayed at me from cigars, cigarettes, and even from ballpoint pens. Also from the wig of a woman sitting next to me. Even the Swiss cheese type ice cubes were evaporating into poison nerve gas smoke in all of the free drinks. I got up and went to the rear of the airplane by the rear exit door with a large push-up handle. My Frankenstein brain thoughts broadcasting radio disclosed my intentions. Immediately, the loudspeakers screamed that the flight was over and that our airplane was already preparing to land at Kennedy, New York airport. You hangman rope sneak gangster playboy scum on top know these facts are true, not only from taking part in such undetectable exterminations, but also you chicanerous, demented, felon, parroting puppet gangsters can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of all these horrible, terrifying, deadly events. When I returned home, Joseph Ideck, my only brother and deadly felon, murderer, and assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, he beat me repeatedly, cursing me that I was not exterminated by all of the poison nerve gas smoke, and that I did the impossible in that I kept awake for 3 days and refused all food in order to prevent my sneak extermination. In accordance with the completely gangster computer god concocted and manipulated statutory laws, one of your gangster court's requisite duties is to automatically rehear my said appeal case, because it has been brought to your attention, you hangman rope gangsters, that my entire life was destroyed by you co-conspirators through the gangster government perjured and fabricated criminal conviction of me in order to fulfill the demands of your communist god, the worldwide mad deadly gangster computer god. You deadly parroting puppet felon gangsters already know that I have been and am an innocent primary victim and target for destruction and extermination, because I am a menace to your gangster computer god, and that I am worse than defenseless without the gangster protection and control.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good grief. How is your, well, I guess, Thursday/Friday going? Mine has been eventful. In fact, I got back from a ruck march not too long ago. I'm still wearing my rucking gear, I guess, minus the ruck, of course. Little shoulders are a little bit sore, because I didn't actually go that far tonight, but I actually I worked all day yesterday processing the trees that I had chopped down. And then I did the ruck march about, I want to say somewhere in the range of 8 miles. And then tonight, all I did was about 3, but I was already kind of blown out. And I was like, like, should I do it? I got to do it. So my shoulders are a little bit sore right now. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I got out there. Almost had a weird encounter with some creepy somebody cruising around on a off-road something or other. Couldn't tell. Luckily, they didn't go down the trail that I was on. But you rarely see anyone way out where I was at. So it was a little weird. I was like, who is that? Who is that? Are they gonna cause trouble? Anyway. So not a whole lot going on in the news cycle because a lot of it's being taken up by the impeachment crap that really, does anyone really care about? I mean, aside from the people for whom it's some kind of cathartic thing, you know, this is the punishment they wanted to give Orange Hitler for all these years. They're finally getting to show him who's boss. And it certainly isn't Trump. No, it certainly isn't Trump. Because of his inability to say you're fired, you know, that he's the one that ended up without a job. And now he may end up being the one that's impeached. I don't know. There are people, Lindsey Gay Graham is saying that there aren't the votes for it. Mitch McConnell is a little waffly. Doesn't really matter. Does it really matter? Does anyone actually care? Not really. Not really. The only thing that's interesting about the impeachment proceedings, I don't know if you guys have paid any attention at all. If you haven't, just as an example, you know, funny enough, Nick Fuentes keeps coming up. I think they've played now 2 clips of him. To be fair, out of context, where it appears as though he is cheering on violence, right? But if you watch the full context, that's actually not at all what he's saying. But it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. See, this is the lesson that people on the right need to learn. It doesn't matter. The reason why optics don't matter is because you can care about optics all you want. You can be very careful about optics, and they'll just lie about you. They'll just lie about you. The only time optics matter is, and by the way, optics really is another way of just saying lying. You're lying about what you really think. You think other people are going to be embarrassed or scared or disgusted by what you really think, and so you lie. That's what optics means. I want this to look good to people. And by the way, it's not some like cutting edge. Optics isn't some cutting edge like term. This is like a 90s political hack, term that for some reason has been resurrected. and is for some reason is thrown around like it's like this brilliant. Oh, you know, I know a fancy political consultant word from the 1990s, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm optical. No, it really doesn't matter. It's basically a way of saying lying. You're lying. You're because you are either lying by literally lying or lying by omission because you want to sell better. Now look, you can be. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be strategic about the way that you roll out your ideas. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be mindful of the Overton window and things like this. I get it. I police what comes out of my mouth. Everyone does. I don't just vomit out every thought that I have in the raw way in which it's articulated in my mind in that moment. And everyone listening, trust me, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that there's a filter. Believe it or not, there is a filter, a little bit of a filter. Everyone does. I get it. But when you make that your core strategy? The opposition couldn't pay. They couldn't pay for a better opponent. Because you're basically saying that you don't have the power. You don't have the power to say what you want to say. Because that's what it is. Right? Are you trying to tell me that everything that the left says is optical? Are trannies optical? Are trans kids optical? Is Black Lives Matter optical? Was the summer of love optical? Is wearing masks optical? Are shutdowns optical? You seen a pattern here? It's not about optics, it's about power. Now, if you don't have power, you have to be a little bit craftier. I get it. That's true. That's true. But if all you worry about is this optical? You'll never have power. You will never, ever, ever have power. We are going to take a look at some older strategies. A lot of people have heard the name Saul Alinsky and the rules for radicals and this sort of a thing, and it might seem like an outdated thing. Saul Alinsky was Hillary Clinton's mentor, or at least that's what she said. He was a community organizer, likely the kind of person, if not the person, who would inspire people like Obama to be community organizers, quote unquote. He was a Jew, and he dedicated his book, Rules for Radicals, to Satan, and really did not like Christians, and was very vocal about his dislike of Christians. And a lot of times people, when they talk about Saul Alinsky, what they do is they want to use it to help people understand the left and their tactics. And that is a useful thing, because while some of these things in the context of time are not as relevant, right? But you'd be surprised, and we'll go over them, and you'll see, you'd be surprised. A lot of this stuff is still just as relevant today as it was in the 60s when he was developing this stuff. But it's also useful, and a couple people have toyed around with this, but not to the extent that is required. And that is, and I discussed this in my book a little bit, it's the concept of, if you can't beat them, join them. And that doesn't mean that you all become leftists because they're the ones that have all the power. It means, the strategies that we have been using since always have never worked. We've talked several times about how it's not a culture war, it's a culture rape. If it was a culture war, we would have some successes to talk about, and we have none. Zero. And so it's not a war, it's a rape by every definition. There's no possible way this is a war. And so if what you've been trying forever has never worked, It's time to take a look at your opponent's tactics, and even if you find them distasteful and disgusting and immoral, you have to realize when you are at war, which is, I mean, that'd be an upgrade, right? From a rape. When you are at war, you end up having to do distasteful, disgusting, immoral things. And if you're not willing to do that, then you might as well just keep, bite the pillow, because you're just going to keep getting raped. If you're getting raped, do you think, well, I would kick him in the nuts, but that's like a low blow. That's a low blow. I don't, you should never kick someone in the nuts. I don't care how mad you are. No, you kick them in the fucking nuts because you're getting raped. You're getting raped. Like, you got to kick them in the nuts. So anyway, in preparation for this, I was taking a look at some old, because I'd read Rules for Radicals years ago, and it's a fascinating read. Again, this isn't like a new. Lots of people by now, I would hope, but maybe there's some new people that aren't familiar with this. But I would check out the book. You can find the audiobook free online. It's actually not hard to find. And just have a listen. It's worth to at least be aware of it. And we're going to talk more in depth about some of the stuff, but it's good to have an overview. And the context is, in the 1960s, he did a lot of community organizing for minority groups and things like that, right? And in effect, he was instrumental in toppling white power in America and in the West, because he also operated out of Canada. And so I took a look at some old footage, and there's he did a lot of interviews, and there's a Canadian broadcasting. I don't know. It's it's a very strange. Because it's called a documentary. There's no narrator. It's just footage of him discussing what happened in the 1960s. And this might have been. It's probably late 60s, maybe early 70s. Is you had the native population in Canada, the Indians, wanted to have political power. And so they called in Saul Alinsky to act as kind of a consultant on how to do that. And so this documentary, if you will, but like I said, it's really just footage. It's footage of him first. There's part one. You can watch both these on YouTube. They're too long to watch during the stream because they're part one and part two. They're both like a half hour long. I watched them today looking for good clips. We might play one clip, but a lot of because it's so conversational, you kind of have to watch like the whole thing. But the one the thing that kept happening was, in part one, for example, he encounters the white hippie community organizers, if you will, that are already trying to work with the Indians to help them get political power that they want. And he immediately attacks their idealism. Because these are hippies in like insufferable hippies, like super boomer hippies. If you watch it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And he immediately, like a sociopath, just cuts them like a knife, and it's just like, you guys are You will never get what you want. You are never going to get this free love society. You are a tiny minority on this planet. And even if you were to want this kind of a change, you'll never achieve it because you're unwilling to recognize the world as it is. And because you can't recognize the way the world as it is, you will not be able to then change it because your perception of reality is so idealistic and fucked up that you don't even have a starting line. And while this was hippies in the late 60s, perhaps early 70s, I don't know exactly which year. And it's real easy to imagine the kinds of stupid free love, idealism that they had. I mean, it's an extreme, right? It's an extreme case of idealistic retards that want some kind of fantasy land utopia that's never going to fucking happen. Right? I think it's just as prevalent on the right today in our situation now. Because and here's the correlation. Even though it seemed like they were writing some kind of trend, right? Like that, oh, this is the age of Aquarius. This is the beginning of the new age. We stop caring about Western civilization, really, and tradition, and we invent this, aimless free love, whatever garbage. They were the counterculture. And while the right does not have the support of institutions, media, culture, I mean, really anything. And in fact, it's very self-propelling. We don't have money flowing in to the dissident right. We don't have a whole lot of cultural offerings because we don't have large, bands or musicians writing theme songs and anthems. We don't have films being produced showing, making the dissident right look really cool. We don't have the institutional backing that the hippies did. So we're even more fringe, substantially more fringe than the hippies ever were. And yet, we still have people on the right who do, I think, exhibit some of this same utopian idealism that's just as unrealistic. Now, of course, instead of saying that they want to have this free love, whatever Age of Aquarius, flower power bullshit, instead of that, they're talking about, maybe like an ethno-state where somehow we are able to successfully deport every non-white, even like honestly, even like in a state that would be pretty much impossible, and create this white utopia that resembles a Norman Rockwell painting. And look, it's good to have ideals. It's good to have something to shoot for. But if that's the framework, if that's what you're working with, right? If that's your short-term goal, it's never going to fucking happen. Because it's not acknowledging the world as it is. It's not acknowledging how small, how powerless our movement is. And I think that one of the reasons why we have this problem, and I would say this is probably the same reason why the hippies had this problem. In fact, this is the same. This also explains why there was a QAnon. It even explains all these people that say everyone's a Jewish shill. You know, you're a paid shill, or you're a Fed. Everyone, you know, everyone's a Fed. It's all tied to the same thing. It's primitive thinking. It's primitive thinking. Now, what do I mean by primitive thinking? Well, what I mean is, just like the hippies, I guess you could say, the dissident right is so far removed, and actually further removed, from power, it doesn't understand it. It's never tasted it. It's never smelled it. It's never been adjacent to it. And so it's just as if the right's by and large, most people on the right, it's their understanding of power is the same as if I were to get an iPad and go back in time 1,000 years, and I gave it to someone, and I said, "How do you think this works?" What would they say? They would say, "Oh, I don't know. It must be the gods. This is a window to the gods. Maybe it's, you know, this is some weird magic. A wizard has created this tablet with magical spells. It's a demon. It's a demon." This iPad would be so far removed from anything that they're familiar with. They wouldn't be able to come up with an explanation as to how it worked that was even kind of remotely close to reality. And I'm sorry, but that's a lot of the dissident right when it comes to power. They're like a chimpanzee holding an iPad going, "I don't know how this works." Because they've never tasted it, they've never touched it, they've never felt it, and they certainly didn't design the system that made it work. And so what do? They you know, we talked about in the past, you know, all they can do is try to think of examples in fiction, right? Because that's the closest thing that they have to actually encountering power. Well, I don't know. I saw a movie about power. I guess it's like that movie, you know, which explains, you know, why people still thought that, you know, Trump was going to come and win it at the end, because that's what would happen in a movie, right? But that's also why people thought, you know, a lot of the Q people thought that, you know, Trump was this superhero with all kinds of powers, because these people have never been to the White House. Now, they've never been in a meeting. A lot of these people, they don't know anyone in their personal lives that makes six figures. A lot of these people don't. I mean, increasingly, I guess a lot of people don't. You know, there was an article that they were passing around saying that, oh my God, the people that were invading the Capitol, part of the insurrection, they all had financial troubles. Whether it was tax debt or, credit card debt or whatever. They're these fucking poor people. Well, yeah, of course. That's a lot of people these days. And those people aren't going to understand power. Those people especially. Because they've never been in close proximity to it. They've never observed it up close. They've certainly never participated in it. So it's left up to their imagination. You know, when people think everyone's a Fed, same thing. Well, you must be a Fed because you're saying this. You must be a Fed because you're saying that. You must be a shill. You're a Jewish. The ADL pays you. They're so far removed from how the ruling class works that they cook up these unbelievably complicated movie-like ways to explain it because they've never been in close proximity to power and they don't understand it. Or they're lying because they know that the people listening to them don't understand it. One of the two. But Saul Alinsky, he talks about one of the biggest things he talks about in terms of working within this unfortunate, I guess, circumstance that a lot of people that need to organize, and oppose power, I guess, is they fundamentally don't understand it because they've never wielded it. They've never seen it. They have no familiarity with it whatsoever. And one of the things he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if you're asking someone else to give you what you want, right? And think of the Q-tard people, right? They wanted Trump to solve all the problems for them. They didn't want to have to actually do anything themselves. Even if they end up doing it, that only gets you that thing for as long as they want to give it to you, because if they're powerful enough to give you this thing that you want, they're also powerful enough to take it away. And so it's not even really yours what you're getting. It only becomes yours if you are the one that takes it. So I think it's time that the right needs to do some self-examination and understand that it's good to have ideals. It's good to have this idealism to some extent, and it's good to have values. Certainly, obviously, And that's part of what we're trying to preserve here, right? But it's also important to recognize reality. So I am going to play one little clip, and then we'll talk about we'll go over the rules, and we'll talk about how maybe they apply to what's going on right now. One quick clip, though. Let me see if I've got it here. This is a clip of Saul Alinsky. He's gone to an Indian reservation. And the Indians on the reservation are very difficult to work with because they're worse than the hippies. The hippies were bad enough because they had their stupid hippie idealism. Well, the Indians have their idealism as well. But on top of that, they've got an IQ issue going on. And they've got like a racial hatred for the white people that they can't just, they won't vocalize. But it's palpable. It's there. And in fact, if you watch the whole video, he calls them on it and makes them, just says like, just say it. Just, stop trying to like pretty up, stop trying to be optical, if you will. Just say it. Say, look, these white people came and killed all the buffalo and they're bastards and they owe us something. Just say it like that. Don't just try to like make up some optical platform. Just say what you mean. So anyway, in this clip, he's on the reservation and he's talking to, I guess, the tribal leaders. And they're being extremely idealistic. And he's just had enough. And he let me see if I can get the right timing on this one here. Yeah. This guy on the right here. Let me look at my time. But he keeps saying like, oh, all we have to do is, he keeps the Indian reservation representative, the guy in the black right here. He keeps saying for like a really long time. I'm skipping over like 20 minutes of this. He keeps saying, well, how do we interface with the white Canadian government without interfacing with them on their terms? Because we are just a simple people and we want to maintain our values and we just want to live simply on our Indian reservation. And we don't want to get involved with the government using the systems the white man created because we don't want it to corrupt our way of life. And Saul Alinsky just, keeps telling them, all right, well, then you deserve what you get. You deserve the lifestyle you have if you're not going to engage with them using their rules. If you don't play by their rules, you deserve what you get. It's another thing I go over in great detail, actually. In fact, if anything, that's what my first book's about. And so this is, let me back it up a little bit here. So this is Saul Alinsky talking to this Indian fella how he's got to drop the idealism.
In the past, and we think in terms of not so much what we can take, but so much as what we can give. And I think Indians can be organized around the amount that they can give to the white man, not so much around the amount that they can take from him. Because 400 years has already proven that the Indian isn't so inclined toward the white man's society. He hasn't come into it, and he refuses to. But to organize them around things that they can give the white man, and do you think yourself that
what do you mean you're going to organize around things you can give?
We can give them a way of life that is better than the one they got already.
We're not buying that. Forget that. That's being so idealistically unreal that you're out of the world on that.
But I see the hippies are buying it. And I see a whole portion of the youth constituency that are buying it. I hear things now around that are love and
This is a very minute segment of the whole.
It's minute now, but it's a start. It's like what you said about getting a little compromise. It's the start. And from that start, maybe something can happen.
Look, there are things you want. It comes down very simply. Do you want them? If you want them, you have to go out and get them. If you want to go out and get them, there are only certain ways that you go out and get them. If you want to sit around and talk about love, and you want to talk about Christianity, and Christians were talking about love. You know, there were hippies back then. There were more than hippies. They walked into the Colosseum with the lions and the tigers and everything else and died for it, you know, for love. And Father, forgive them, etc. If you want to do it that way, I mean, go ahead. As I told you before, this is the kind of thing that white society would love to see you do, because they know you're not going anywhere, and it means that they can go on doing what they want without being concerned about making any changes.
You don't.
They'd love to see all the Negroes in America living on their reserves.
Well, you know, you seem like a man who has no love or none of these feelings or anything. Isn't
I have a hell of a lot more love than you have, because I'm willing to go out and get corrupted for it. I'm willing to fight for it. I'm willing to stick my life on a line on it. And you're just willing to stick around and talk about love and hippies and not do a goddamn thing.
Yeah, but that's not true, you see.
The hell it isn't. We wouldn't be talking about it this way.
What do you know about values that we say that are Indian, and those things that are entailed in this whole thing of things that belong to people, their own values, their own culture, and all those things that are built into their way of life, their environment, those things that they feel good about, they feel comfortable.
All I know is what I heard at the luncheon table today, but let me say this to you. I will assume that you have a wonderful set of values to feel comfortable with. My ancestors had a set of values called the Ten Commandments, which they thought that they would feel comfortable with. But in the world as it is, the rest of the people in the world will only let you have as much of your own values as you're strong enough to keep. And you can only get changes as you're strong enough to get them.
I'm going to let it run a little bit longer, but I just want to pause on that point right there. The world will only let you have the values that you're strong enough to take from the world. So it's one thing to say that, oh, I've got all these values, you know, like I want to have Western values. I want to preserve these values. Well, so what? Unless you're in a position of power, and unless you take those values from the world, take them. The world's not going to just give them to you. The world's not going to just leave you alone. They've proven that. There's nowhere else to go. There's no new world across the ocean that we can escape to. So unless you take, and you're strong enough to take those values, you don't get a perfect example. Look at what the Muslims are doing in Europe. Seems like they're taking the values that they want to keep. All right. Anyway, I'm going to let this play for slightly longer.
And as you have the ability to act on it, it is impossible. Believe me on this one thing: it is impossible to chart regardless of what procedure you're using, to chart an orderly plan of organization. A very disorganized manner in the beginning. But actually, in the beginning, you use the opposition as your main organizer. You literally provoke them into actions against you that will irritate more people and get them moving.
I wouldn't bother to do anything.
You know what your young friend ought to do over there? He ought to organize all the Indian reserves into the hippie movement.
Well, maybe that's what all the Indian reserves want, if they all want that. You know?
The Indian hippies coming out of Canada, this may be the answer.
Well, if that's what they want, it may very well be the answer. I mean, following your own statement, like these people sit down, they say, look, we all want to be hippies.
You'll get the biggest tourist trade, and that'll solve your economic problems.
No, but I mean, look, you're making fun of it.
I'm not making fun. I'm being dead serious. I'm telling you that if you turn the Indian bands into big hippie camps, sort of, so when you have your powwows, there are big love-ins and so forth, you will get the American tourist trade with millions of dollars flowing right in here.
What if they don't want the $1 million?
I'll take it.
No, but see, here you are. You're not serious.
You've got to start from where you are. This is the world you're living in. You can't just say, a world of self-interest, I don't want it. I want a world of altruism. A world in which the right things are practically always done for the wrong reasons. This is an immoral world. I don't want that. A world in which there is no such thing as the best. It's always the least worse. I don't want that kind of a world. You can go on and on. This has been the constant business. But you've got to start with the world as it is.
You have to start with what you got. You have to work within the framework of how the world actually is, and not how you'd like it to be. And people like this guy right here on the screen, they're such idealists that they're struggling with just even understanding the first step of how to accomplish what they want. Because he wants some like magical fucking Indian land where, you know, he doesn't have to actually engage with white culture because it's intimidating to him. Let's just be honest. The reason they had to call this guy in is they were wholly unprepared and unable to interface with the white dominant culture. So, anyway, let me take a look here. Am I off the air? Oh, no, it's back. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought my app had stopped updating. I thought like the stream got taken down. Because that's the reality that we're working with. Is the reality that we can't even stream. You know, there's nothing more frustrating when people bitch and moan about like why are you on Trovo? Why are you on Chinese Trovo? Because fuck you, dude. What am I supposed to go on? What am I supposed to go on? The Communist Party isn't the one censoring me. That's why I'm using their streaming service. You dig? Like BitChute's always buffering. Okay. Well, I'm sure that now that you've complained in the comments, it won't buffer anymore. Good job. Like, if you guys can't handle that, you're never going to survive. If you can't handle some buffering or the fact that we can't be on American platforms, I mean, fuck, we can't be on American platforms. Who would have thought? BitChute's not American either. Like, there's not an American platform that you can be on. I mean, Gab, I guess, but they don't have video yet. I mean, they sort of do, but not really. They don't have streaming. And not that it matters to me anyway. I don't care. Like I've been saying, it's almost better to give us. like the whole boomer buy American thing. Nah, fuck it. Buy Chinese. In fact, why would you buy American? Who do you think's fucking us in the ass? Who do you think the culture rape? Who do you think's doing the culture rape? It's the people that get the money when you buy American. And you buy Chinese. Fuck it. At least those guys, they're not fucking you in the ass. Why would I don't give a shit about buy American. It's almost worse if I buy American. Netflix is American. Amazon's American. Buy American. Why are you on a Chinese platform? Dude. This is what I'm talking about. It's the primitive thinking of these idealistic fucks that don't have a concept of reality. I'm on a Chinese platform because reality. That's why. The sooner you get here, the better. All right, let's take a look. So here are Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. And again, I know this isn't like anything new. People have talked about this, but my guess is that there's a few people that have not heard about this stuff. And certainly not through the context of today. And for others, it might be a good refresher. Even for me, look, I haven't even read through these before we're doing this. I'm winging this whole thing. I read the book, but it was like 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a long time. But here we go. Rule 1. Power is not what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Power is not what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Now flip that around. We'll look at it both ways. When you're freaking out and calling everyone a fad and everyone a Jewish shill and stuff like that, power is not what they have. It's what you think they have. And if you think they have some crazy network of paid Jewish shills and half the content creators are federal agents, they might as well be. Right? They might as well be. If you think that you can't organize because even just organizing for like a book club, like not doing anything illegal, but just organizing is everyone's gonna get doxxed and everyone that shows up will lose their jobs and their lives will be destroyed. Well, that might as well be true then, because you think it. They might as well have that power because you think they do. Now let's flip that around a little bit. Now, I think it's obvious to look at the impeachment proceedings, for example, and just the media coverage and see that they're blowing what happened on the 6th, the protest on the 6th, completely, insanely out of proportion. And they're trying to do it to scare people into supporting what they want, right? But it works both ways. That gives you some power. Because it's not that there was an insurrection, it's that the people think that there was. That gives you power, believe it or not. Now, you can totally shit it and piss it away by apologizing and by blaming Antifa or whatever. But perception is everything. And you can use it to your advantage or you can piss it away. It's up to you. And look, there really is a fear on the left. There is a fear of people. They, in the same way that there are a lot of delusional people on the right that think all it would take is an afternoon. You just get a bunch of people with their AR-15s in the back of pickups trucks, and somehow, we take back America or whatever. As much as that, there's that delusional, or that flavor of delusion on the right. There's the equal and opposite reaction, I guess, on the left, where they really think, oh my God, one day they're all going to hop in the back of some pickup trucks and they're going to, have right-wing death squads and they're going to come door to door and they're going to kill us all. There's power in that. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't have to be true. Power is derived from two main sources: money and people. We don't have money, so we have to use people. And they know this, which is why every time the right tries to organize, something like Charlottesville as an example, they freak the fuck out. Or I guess you could include the 6th now with that. They freak the fuck out. Because they realize that power comes from money or people. And we don't have money. They don't have to worry about that. And in fact, they can do things to make sure we don't have money. And now they're doing things to make sure we don't have people. Or at least, people that are organized in any kind of way. And if you think that these stay-at-home orders, these quote-unquote COVID stay-at-home orders aren't tied to all this, then again, you're not tied to reality. There was a lot of organized things happening, if you remember, just prior to the COVID stay-at-home order, all the lockdown stuff. All over the world. It wasn't just in America. You had the yellow vests in Europe. You had the Hong Kong stuff. You had the BLM stuff being countered. You had people on the right, even in the UK, starting to organize IRL events. Money and people. And we don't have any money. All right, rule 2. Never go outside the expertise of your people. Never go outside the expertise of your people. The subheading here is, it results in confusion, fear, and retreat. Feeling secure adds to the backbone of anyone. Organizations under attack wonder why radicals don't address the real issues. This is why they avoid things with which they have no knowledge. Now this one, I'm trying to think of how this would apply to what's going on right now. Never go outside the expertise of your people. I think this might apply more on smaller scale stuff. But if you try to think about it on a larger scale, a lot of the people on the right have a particular talent for memeing and for really for humor. You know, because the left has lost its sense of humor because it can't laugh at people anymore. Which, by the way, that's a massive loss because one of their biggest weapons used to be ridicule, and now they don't have that weapon anymore. So maybe ridicule would be something to focus on if you're on the right. Or, I mean, there's other things that the right has a lot of expertise in, you know. But maybe we'll talk about that some other time. Rule number 3, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Well, the humor thing that's a perfect example. They've lost their inability to be funny. They've lost their ability to, you have the whole left can't meme, which is totally not true. But the left can't be funny. That is true. The left can't be funny. There are no funny leftists at all. So humor would be a good thing to focus on in terms of just, you know, information warfare. And I get it. Like, we're kind of getting beyond that. And so, which would also, by the way, what is the left or outside their expertise? Well, it's kind of lines up with all I'm going to say is if you guys ever watch the videos of what was that group called? The Not Fucking Around, the black guys marching around with those ridiculous fucking guns. I would just say it's pretty obvious from that footage that weaponry is outside of their expertise. Let's just put it that way. I mean, look, if you want just a practical example of this, look at the Second Amendment rally that took place in Virginia. It was effective. Because the right can show up. That proved it. The right can show up with a show of force, a show of strength. No one gets hurt. No one got shot or anything crazy like that. Unlike the Not Fucking Around thing, right? Where they were shooting each other on accident. Get a bunch of people showing up. And projecting strength. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a controlled strength. I don't know. There's a term that's right for this. It's just escaping my mind at the moment. But they're showing that, look, you know, shit could get real. Shit could get real fast. Yeah, we're proving here that we'll show up. We'll show up. We're not going to do anything now. But we're showing you that we'll show up. And that's something a lot of the dissident right specifically doesn't often do. There's almost never a show of force because of this primitive thinking, this fear that like everyone's a Fed, and it's just like, what do you think? Like when you say that everyone's a Fed, we've gone over this a million times. Yeah, if someone says on a Discord server, "Hey, we're gonna go kidnap Nancy Pelosi or something like that," that's retarded. Obviously, that's Fed posting. All right, let's make it clear. But when you say, "Hey, let's go to the Capitol," as a show of force and not do anything crazy, and you still call that a Fed thing to do, you just don't understand power. You just don't understand power. Or you're a coward. I don't know. One of the two. Rule number 4. Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Now, again, this one, I think we're kind of past it. This is something that you do see on the from the left all the time, right? Where they force the right's morality onto themselves all the time. But then the left doesn't have that same morality. So that morality only exists when they are forcing the right to adhere to their own morality. And you kind of see the same thing, like the right tries to do this to the left, with the whole, well, if this person had been black instead of white, or if this, playing that stupid game, like every time, or for example, the black couple that beat to death the little girl because of her white privilege, and the right tries to say like, well, if it had been a white couple, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We're so well beyond that, because there are no principles on the left at all. And so trying to make the left live up to their principles is impossible, because they don't have any principles. And honestly, that's kind of increasingly the case on the right. And so there's really this rule, I think, is increasingly becoming outdated. I'll read the subtext anyway. If the rule is that every letter gets a reply, send 30,000 letters. You can kill them with... this is weird. This seems a lot of context. You can kill them with this because no one can possibly obey all their own rules. This is a serious rule. The besieged entity's very credibility and reputation is at stake, because if activists catch it lying or not living up to its commitments, they can continue to chip away. Again, I think we're well beyond this. This no longer applies because there are no principles. There's no rules. I guess that's what the best way to put it. We're post rule of law, and because there are no rules, which, by the way, to me indicates that we are already at war, but because there are no rules, you can't make the enemy live up to their own rules, because there's no rules. And so it doesn't really work out. So I think that's one of the rules that they're obsolete now. Rule number 5, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Now, this one works, but it's becoming increasingly less potent. And we'll talk about why in a second. But we were just talking about that, how the right has the sense of humor, and the left has increasingly no sense of humor. And here's the subtext. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions. Pretty crude and rude, huh? Then they want to create anger and fear. So that you want to basically, you're throwing your opponent off its game. Now, a good example of this would be Stephen Colbert. Before he was on the late night show, had his own show on Comedy Central called the Colbert Report. And it was this hyperbolic, conservative talk show host, kind of modeled after Bill O'Reilly. And that's what he did. It was just ridicule, 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 ridicule. And in fact, the Daily Show, I mean, everyone remembers this. I guess most of entertainment ridicules right-wing stuff all the time, right? Well, this is becoming increasingly non-existent, not only because the left is losing its sense of humor, but also it's hard for the right to use ridicule as a weapon against the left, because as the left loses its sense of humor, it's simultaneously losing its shame. And so it's really hard to shame people with ridicule when they have no shame. And it's even harder to shame people with ridicule when they have no shame and they control the platforms that you use to ridicule them. So if they can just call your ridicule hate speech and take you off your platform, it becomes, again, it's an increasingly obsolete weapon. And it's also another indication in my estimation, it's another reason why I believe that we're already at war. Because a lot of this stuff has gone out the window. This stuff, a lot of it's more relevant pre-war. Rule number 6. A good tactic is one your people enjoy. Now this one is good. The subtext is they'll keep doing it without urging and come back to do more. They're doing their thing and will even suggest better ones. So now this, I guess you could say, this really applied to the 2016 meme war. Everyone liked, and again, it's becoming increasingly obsolete now. But in 2016, all these memes that were being shared around, all the Trump, I mean, like Trump's got so much free media, not just from the news reports about him, obviously, but I mean just on the internet, the amount of memes being generated just for free because people enjoyed doing it. They thought it was hilarious. The video. I mean, that's why I got into it. When I first started making memes and stuff, it was because it was hilarious. It was a sense of humor about it. It was I really enjoyed making the 3D dancing Pepe, and knowing that people would go crazy when they saw, my supercut of every time Hillary would cough and stuff like that. But again, I think we're now passing beyond that. Rule number 7. A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Well, I guess that kind of ties into what we were just talking about with the meme war. Soon as this tactic, the meme war tactic, went on for 4 years, and it was successful in one of those 4 years. It was successful in the first year because it was a tactic that the enemy wasn't prepared to deal with. But if you paid attention, I mean, they countered it pretty effectively. Like that Time magazine article that just came out, they talked about how they shut down. I mean, that Hunter Biden laptop stuff. I know a lot of people seem to think it's just like you're just smearing him because he got a lot of pussy. It's like, no, there's like some horrible shit on there, like really horrible shit, and not just like the sex stuff, like the corruption stuff. And in a normal environment, in a pre-war environment, that stuff would have mattered. And they knew this. And that Time magazine article that talked about how they would shut down information, that's specifically what they were talking about, is stuff like that. There's a reason why that story was disappeared off the internet, and entire accounts. The New York fucking Post. The New York fucking Post, if you remember, got banned from Twitter for linking their own article that was nothing in it was wrong. To this day, you can look at that same article's up. They didn't have to make any retractions. But because they had such a well-oiled machine working in the background to shut down any mention of that story, the New York fucking Post lost their Twitter account. And now it's continued. The New York Post is back, but Gateway Pundit just lost their Twitter account. Today, Project Veritas lost their Twitter account. So they've like I said, some of these have become obsolete because we are no longer in this polite political battle. Rule number 8. Keep the pressure on, never let up. Keep trying new things to keep the opposition off balance. As the opposition masters one approach, hit them from the flank with something new. Now that is particularly relevant because of what we just talked about. And that's not something that the right has been very good at doing. It is not something the right has proven to be successful with at all. Instead, you saw a lot of the same tactics being used over and over and over. In fact, we just talked about this. The right has been using the same tactics since the dawn of fucking time, and most of those tactics don't work. And so that's why it's time to start trying new things. And that's why we got to keep we also do have to keep the pressure up. Right now, there's no pressure on. What kind of pressure is on the left right now? The right's in full-blown retreat mode. You got the Q-tards where they're just totally checked out mentally. Like they're on fucking Neptune, right? And then you've got like the America First people who can't come to terms with the fact that Trump was a massive faggot and it was just awful, and is still trying to like cling to the same thing that led to failure for the last 4 years. And then you have like the neocons who just, they're probably actually excited that Biden got elected and we can start bombing shit for Israel again. And it's time to start thinking about new ideas and new tactics and new approaches. Rule number 9, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Now, again, this is, like I said, we've talked about this a lot of times. It's the spectacle of fearsome acts. We've talked about that at length when it comes to power. Understanding power, the origin of power. If I have that clip, in fact, I'll play it. I don't know that I've got it handy. But this is a clip that I like to reference from the film Gangs of New York, where Daniel Day-Lewis's character explains power. Is it in here? I might not have this clip. If I don't have this clip, it's okay. I think I've played it enough to where I think the vast majority of you guys know what I'm talking about. Let's see here. I'm going to keep looking for it, just a couple seconds. And I don't think I have it. But essentially his character is saying, look, if someone offends me, I basically show up to a knife fight with a gun. It's a constant respond asymmetrically every fucking time. And do so brutally that people fear the worst. And I've talked about another example of this is if you look at primates, right? And you have like the alpha monkey, we'll use like chimpanzees, right? And he has to kick the ass of the challengers to remain top dog. And at some point in human history, humans discovered this is a very costly way of doing things, because I'm always having to kill the challenger, and I get injured, and plus we lose people, and you might still have to do that in certain situations, but because that's so costly, it's better to just have the appearance of violence, like the symbol of violence. In other words, instead of me having to just, murder the shit out of someone in front of everybody in the most violent way possible, why don't I just have a big club hanging from my belt that's covered in blood and brain matter as a reminder that if you fuck with me, I'm capable of taking this off my belt and bashing your brains in. You know, a modern example of this is, and I've talked about this too, where you have, Walmarts will pay to have a cop just park their car in the parking lot because it makes shoplifting go down. It's the appearance. It's the appearance of force. It's the symbol of force. And it can be just as effective as actual force, and it's way cheaper. Way cheaper. And look, we can go back to that Virginia Second Amendment rally. They didn't storm the Capitol. No one got shot at or anything like that. It was the appearance of force. It was the symbol of force that ended up being effective. And that's something that again, the right is terrified to do for some reason. Rule number 10, if you push a negative hard enough, it'll push through and become a positive. Violence from the other side can win the public to your side because the public sympathizes with the underdog. Now again, I think this is a little bit outdated. You can definitely see how the left used that, right? You can see how the left used that tactic in the past. And look, you could even say, in a way, that they, like, if you look at the George Floyd thing, right? Like, obviously, every fact about that is fiction, really. But the storyline would kind of, the official storyline still kind of fit this, right? But increasingly, this is becoming obsolete. Even the whole America likes an underdog thing is obsolete because it's not America that likes an underdog. It's white people. So when white people are the underdog, no one else cares. You understand that? This is a very crucial thing to understand. One of the reasons why this rule is becoming obsolete is it's not America, or Americans as they're defined these days, that likes an underdog. It's white people that like underdogs. And so when white people are the underdog, the only people that care are white people. So you got to remember, some of this stuff becomes obsolete simply because the demographic shift is so profound that it just, the psychology that you're working against is different. And this is one of those cases. For example, like in the subheading here, it says violence from the other side can win the public onto your side. Oh, really? So all that violence from all summer long, you would think that would win people over to our side. No, it didn't, right? But wait, it sort of did. It won white people, some white people over to our side, right? It woke up a lot of white people because this psychology only works on white people. It doesn't work on on other people. So that's something to take into. When you read this book, if you read the book, you got to realize it's almost more of like rules for undermining white people. Might be a better way. And some of that will just still apply to everybody, but some of it's going to be too specific to white people. All right, rule number 11. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. And the subtext here is, never let the enemy score points because you are caught with a solution to the problem. Not sure I understand this one. Hold on, let me read this here. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. Never let the enemy score points because you're caught with a solution to the problem. Does he give an example here? If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Activist organizations have an agenda, and their strategy is to hold a place at the table to be given a... Okay. So I guess what he's saying is, if your issue that you're going into this conflict is solved too quickly, then you know you lose power, right? So it's better to have a perpetual issues, which may, again, if you look at how the left has subverted white people over the last, since this was written in the 60s, you can see how this tactic was used, right? Because they present a problem like, well, we want equality. We want black people to have all the same opportunities that white people have, just as an example, right? Well, now black people have more opportunities than white people, but it's still somehow the problem it's still racist. Everything's still racist, and you know what I mean? So the problem can never be solved. That's my read on this rule here. Again, doesn't really apply to us because we can't even get them to even listen to our problem, let alone solutions to it. Rule number 12, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Cut off the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions. Well, you can definitely see how that has been used against us. You could definitely see how that has been used against us. To the point now where we don't even have institutions, right? In fact, you might even argue that this is how they were able to take down all the institutions, was to assassinate, either character-wise or, in some cases, actually assassinate people, and then replace them with your guys, over the decades. That's why we don't have institutions at all. But it's true. And it's just easier. It's one thing to say, we need to take out the deep state. All right, well, what are you talking? You're talking about thousands of fucking people. And there's no face to it. And if you constantly speak in generalities like that, oh, it's them. It's them. It's the deep state. It's the left. Or even it's the Jews or whatever, right? If you speak in these big generalities, well, you're never going to win. If that, especially from a point coming from a place of no power. How are you ever going to take out an organization that has unlimited funds? You're never going to be able to do it. But if you go after individuals It's a much more effective strategy. That is something that's possible. Rule number 12, or that was the rule number 12. So that was the 12 rules. So that's the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. There's a lot more in the book where he probably explains some of the stuff a lot better than I did, but also gives a lot of examples. And there is just kind of you learn a lot of, through the examples that he uses and the length at which he describes them, you learn a lot more than just the rules, what the rules are describing. And you kind of just see the sociopathic nature of these people, which is something that you need to understand. But as we've seen, just by looking over it, not all of it's going to be relevant anymore. Not all of it's going to apply anymore. But it's still important to know, because this is precisely the rule book that was used by the Clintons, by Obama, and I would say pre-Trump leftism absolutely used this rule book for 50 years. Let me take a look here at chat. Cargo Colts in the Pacific. I have no idea what that is. Devin's book has been banned for almost a year now at Amazon. Yep. I think maybe longer than a year. I don't know. I don't remember what day that happened. I gotta refresh here. I think chat locked up. I don't know why this is yeah. I might have to relaunch Trovo. I keep thinking maybe I'm offline because the app keeps locking up. Might not be able to load up. I might have to restart my my other hotspot so I can see what you guys are saying. Well, you know what? I got to restart the hotspot. And while I'm doing that, I will do the secret. Should I do the secret message now, or should I wait till the end? Let me try it one more time. I'm gonna try to load this up. If not, all right. I'm going to step
forwarded to the Bar Association Grievance Committee for prosecution of felon gangster mafiotic negroidic the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable. The blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County with no private law experience, detested by all factions in spite of this solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me. This negroidic, low, mafiotic, deadly Black Frank Gelada was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position of second highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long, worse than a farce Nazi court criminal trial in Nassau County Court, 1958, where dwarfed felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon slut wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her anus, her conch, she repeatedly gesticulated.
All right. The hotspot is restarting now. I gotta change. I have to have two internets for this to work. So I have one that I'm streaming on and one that I can be on Trovo with. All right, let's see if it loads up now. If not, that'll be just, I won't be able to interact with chat. That'll be weird. In fact, I won't even know if I'm still online. Pretty sure I am though, because it says no drop frames. Yeah, it's not loading up. Crazy, crazy. All right, I got one more option. I can start a hotspot off on my phone. And we'll see if that works. Otherwise, I'm flying blind. All right, let's see if this works there. All right, guys. Okay, connect to that. All right, let's see if this works. Now on phone internet. Trovo doesn't load up. There it goes. There it goes. It works with phone internet. All right, let's take a look at chat. Finally. All right. Conservatives only supported Trump because the media attacked him. It was always their plan. The New World Order doesn't lose, and they are 10 steps ahead. I don't know. Like, here's the other thing. That you don't want to get stuck in the primitive thinking. You don't want to think that everything is planned and everything's 10 steps, because these people are humans. They're not magic. They're not magic. You know, just like that iPad that you're handing the primitive man is not magic. They're not invincible. Now, a lot of these guys are really smart, and they're not just, you know, in terms of like IQ, but they go to elite schools that teach them things that you're not learning. And they live in families that bring up their children in ways that your parents aren't bringing you up. They're getting an advantage. They are getting, in some cases, you could say, you know, secret knowledge that helps them control people, and that's successfully helped them control people. But it's also, like I said, you can't, some of this stuff, look, we can't know. And so some of this stuff we do have to kind of fill in the blanks, because unless we're members of the ruling class, some of the stuff we do have to kind of guess, right? But like I said, just don't get caught up in this primitive thinking of, because it's so far away from how you operate, you know, in your life. Therefore, it's all this magical stuff. We don't know that. We don't know that. There is no way to know. You know, like obviously Trump was tied into some powerful people. He's a billionaire. Everyone who's a billionaire is tied into powerful fucking people. And obviously they are able to leverage what happened with Trump to their advantage. Does that mean they planned it? Doesn't mean they planned it. Doesn't mean they didn't plan it. But I'm just saying, before you get so sure of yourself, just realize that we don't know. Let's take a look here. GMC says they're expecting a $2 billion loss in sales due to the semiconductor shortages. Kenwood can't make HTs due to audio chip sourcing issues. Get ready for the money printer to be turned up to warp 3. Got a paper over the holes in the economy. Well, and then according to an article today, this year, for the first time, I don't know if ever, but I mean, maybe ever, the deficit just for this year, and this is before any stimulus checks have gone out, is bigger than the economy. So just so you understand, the deficit for spending, government spending this year before stimulus checks, is going to be larger than the GDP. So if that doesn't tell you that the economy is fake and gay, I don't know what does. They're going to be spending more than the entirety of the economy. We're not actually spending more than that. They're going to be unable to pay more than the entirety of the economy. All right, let's take a look here. Yaesu FT891 is best radio to get now. I've never used that. AMD, I was told to get home. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Trump didn't stop the Great Reset. He's either an idiot or was part of it from the start. Either way, he campaigned on draining the swamp and didn't do it. So at the very least, he's a lying con artist. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We don't know which way. We don't know if he was incompetent. We don't know if he was in on it. But it doesn't really matter that much. That's what I'm saying, though. You get into the primitive thinking when you just start, asserting these things that there's no way to know, right? And it doesn't matter so much because there is one thing we do know, and that is the result. And the result is Trump was a failure, So it doesn't matter, or in terms of like results, he was a failure. So it doesn't matter if it was because he was in on it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It doesn't change what happened. If he was incompetent and a loser, or if he was evil and in on it, he was a bad president. Either way. And he would be a bad president to reelect. Either way. So it doesn't matter. He was just a shitty president. You can say that and not have any primitive thinking going on. That's just dealing with reality. Like what we talked about in the very start of the stream. Is you can't move on. You can't get what you want unless you can work within the context of the reality as the world is. And as the world is, the reality is Donald J. Trump was an awful fucking president. And if you can't understand that, you will never accomplish what you're setting out to go and get, because you're not even in line with reality. Hey, Devin, what do you think of Patrick Casey falling out with Nick and the Groypers? Apparently, Nick was monitored by the feds and Patrick didn't want to go to an IRL meetup. Now Patrick is out of... I don't know. I don't know. It just sounds like drama. That's e-drama. I don't get involved with e-drama. I mean, I know that there's people out there that don't like me, but generally speaking, I don't have like a lot of enemies because I don't give a shit about e-drama. In terms of the Fed thing, I don't know. That sounds interesting. I guess I'll look into that. I don't know what if there's feds involved. I guess that takes it takes it further than drama if federal agents are involved. But that's the thing too. It's like, that's just going to be a part of the way it is. Like I said, I just assume that we're all, in one way or another, being surveilled. So that's all you got to just realize is that that's the surveillance state. That's been the new normal since the Patriot Act. So, I mean, for all of Nick's life, So, I would just, that's why I don't understand the fear of the Fed thing. It's like, yeah, guess what? Just assume that that's always happening, right? That's just assume that, whatever you're saying online is not private. Like, again, this happened today. Instagram said that they're going to start banning accounts if you're in your direct messages. If you say hate speech in your direct messages. So, let me bring that up. This is today. Yeah, Instagram announces tougher consequences for hate speech and direct messages. Instagram is toughening its stance on hate speech and direct messages. The company announced today that it'll start disabling accounts of people who repeatedly send hateful messages. First-time offenders won't be able to send messages for an undefined period of time, but if they send hateful messages again, their account will be disabled. These are your private messages. So, I mean, of course, I mean, nothing's private on the internet. I mean, you can accomplish it, but the average person doesn't have the means to, or at least the mental faculty really to make that happen, right? So just assume if it's happening online, we know for a fact that the NSA indiscriminately captures as much internet traffic as it possibly can, and in fact, it's almost safe to say pretty much all internet traffic is in some form or another. Like I'm sure that they filter out just so they don't have to deal with the bandwidth. Like if you're watching they'll know, oh, this is a Netflix stream, and so we're not going to like archive that. You know, every time someone watches anything on Netflix, that would just be an astronomical amount of hard drive space, right? So I'm sure there's some kind of AI that's determining what's worth storing. But the logic is, and again, this is Patriot Act shit. This goes back for a lot of people, maybe a lot of you guys listening, this is your whole life this has been going on. They archive all of it, and then the way that they justify it legally is they say, oh, it's cool because we don't actually look at it unless we have a warrant. Yeah, right. But you know what I mean? So they say, no, it's cool for us to like record everything as long as we don't look at it. And as Edward Snowden showed, yeah, they're looking at it. They're not supposed to look at it, but of course they look at it. And there's not a lot of controls, he was the way he was describing it. They were just normal contractors using it to spy on ex-girlfriends and shit. So, of course they're looking at it. And as we know, Robert Mueller, who was the director of the FBI at one point, he was famous for using illegal surveillance and then just reverse engineering how he could have legally figured out the evidence another way when he went to court. So, yeah, they look at it and no one ever gets in trouble. So just know that. I don't know what the big deal is. Like, if I found out that the feds were reading all of my DMs on Telegram or something like that, I'd be like, yep. I mean, that sucks. It should be illegal. Probably, technically is. But this is what we're dealing with. Again, this is, once again, until you're able to deal with the reality, until you can come to terms with reality, the way that the world is, you'll never be able to make the world the way you want it to be. Because you won't have a starting point. So you need to wrap your head around the way the world is before you can make it the way that you want it to be. And the way the world is it's a surveillance state. And the left that used to care about that stuff when it was Bush's surveillance state stopped caring about that when it became Obama's surveillance state. And no one's really quite picked up the torch since. The right defended it because it was Bush's surveillance state, and we needed it to stop the evil Muslims that did 9/11. And so they defended it for, over 4 years. And then when it became Obama's surveillance state, they didn't really turn into privacy advocates overnight or really at all. And you had the left that were like up in arms about it because they were afraid of the fascist Bush using it to lock them up. They were probably really actually afraid of it because they knew that when they looked at kiddie porn, it was getting logged somewhere. But they stopped caring when Obama was in charge of it. And now it's this really tiny, I mean, fuck, talk about a subset of a subset. Like, I talk about how the dissident right's a lot smaller than they want to believe. Yeah, the people who care about privacy is like, you could fit in the bunker. Like there's not a lot of people that even give a shit about this anymore. Because for a lot of these people, it's just, that's the way it's always been. And they'll tell you, well, you have nothing to worry about if you have nothing to hide. Well, and look, fuck, I mean, that's people willingly hand over their data to places like Facebook and Twitter, like the amount of data that they're just giving away. It's just been so normalized to give all this information to faceless entities that no one gives a shit anymore. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know why everyone gets all freaked out about the Fed thing. It's like, dude, it's all, that's over. Like there is no privacy. So just know that. And if someone starts acting like they don't know that, then just don't associate with them. It's simple as that. Like I said, if you encounter someone online that starts trying to get you to vocalize your support for something crazy and illegal, don't associate with that person anymore because something's up. Or even if something's not up, it could potentially, let's say they're just a retard. All right, well, now you're going to go down with them. Or nothing will happen. You never know. That's the thing, is when people view the state as like this omnipotent thing, I mean, we've talked about how the military has been degrading, right? Because of the tranny and stuff and just the lowered standards and everything else. That's happened. That's not just the military, all right? That's the entire federal government. In fact, the military is probably like the last one to experience a lot of this, right? Because when I was working at these or doing contract work for some of these agencies, like the pause was already there, It was already it was already 100% there. I mean, there was places where it was worse that I still remember. I went to, I don't want to get in too much detail. I'll just say a large tech company that had an office in San Francisco. And I was walking through the cubicles for some reason, and there was this one guy, and they're like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so's desk. He does, I forget what he does now, but it doesn't matter. But on his desk, like in his cubicle, he had like furry porn, like explicit furry porn, hanging up, just in his cubicle, no big deal. And I was like, this is kind of horrifying. Yeah. It's kind of funny though, huh? I'm like, no, not really. So where is this guy? Oh, he's at a furry convention. Oh, that's good. But that's fine at the office now, right? And I'm sure some of these agencies, that's becoming increasingly acceptable. But at the same time, if you were to have like a 1990s Victoria's Secret poster up in your cubicle, you'd get fired. Furry porn is totally okay, though. All right, take a look at chat here. That Navy SEAL was puke vomit. Think of how many doctors and lawyers, police, every level of class. Yeah, no, yeah. That's the thing, is you got to realize that this deterioration, this dysgenic death spiral that the country's experiencing, it's lowering the capability. Like, if there's any good side to this, it's lowering the capability of the federal government. You know, and now keep in mind that they're while it's lowering their capability, because the rest of the public is also wrapped up in this dysgenic death spiral, they don't need as much of the capability, right? Like their adversaries are similarly affected by this same dysgenic process. So yeah, they're stupider and less competent, but like the people that they're up against are also stupider and less competent. So that's just, it's just that it's slowly turning. We're just slowly turning into like a third world country altogether. There was a great scene from this old Johnny Depp movie, The Libertine, where the main character, this utter degenerate, had woodcuts of a wolf fucking a grown woman, and the mother of Depp burns all of it in disgust. I've never seen that movie. Have I seen Halsley English and turd flinging? No, but I've seen Halsley. I'm not impressed with a Jewish boomer that thinks that Israel is awesome. Mentally ill control freaks running the government ain't good. Can you set up your system so that we can send SSTV memes to the stream? That would be tough. Let's do baby steps. Let's try to just get like anything received. My antenna is in pieces right now. I'm in the middle of fixing something with that. Ed Dutton says people are getting dumber, so there will be a crash. Your jobs are not. Let them drag you down with them. Wait. People are getting dumber, so there will be a crash. Your jobs are not, or are to not let them drag. Oh, I gotcha. Sorry, it's hard to read this thing sometimes. Yeah, I mean, look, you just have to. I mean, I've always just been. I'm in the upper IQ range, and I've always been in. You know, I went to gifted schools and stuff like that, and so for me, even though I don't talk about it often, I've just assumed most people are not going to be at the same level. All right, and so for me. That's just, if I go to a job, this hasn't been the case every job. I've actually, one of the weird things about going to the East Coast actually was, for the first time, I wasn't the obvious, you know, like it wasn't like I'm like when I was living in other states, it was painful because like every place I worked, there was no mentors. Because every job that I had, I was always like the guy that knew what I was doing. And it wasn't until I went to the East Coast and worked at some of these bigger places that that ceased to be the case, where I was like always the smartest one in the room. You know, like it was like, oh, that guy's pretty smart, you know, and you could get some mentorship that way. But that's actually one thing that I think you're going to be losing out on, and why creating communities of smart people is important. Is when the general public, especially if you're like, just even, you don't have to be that high IQ. If you're just slightly above average, or what average used to be, we'll just say, when the rest of the public's IQ is dropping, it's impossible to have a mentor. One of the reasons I had to teach myself like just the 3D animation stuff and a lot of the video stuff that I ended up teaching myself, was I was getting these jobs especially when I was first starting out, just like crappy like TV jobs and stuff like that, with the expectation that, oh, I'm going to, I'll get this shitty job at this TV network, and I'll be in close proximity to people I can learn from. And that was not the case most of the time. It happened occasionally. There was a couple times you found some guy that actually was smart and knew what he was doing. But it was shockingly, there was a lot of incompetence. And so I would end up having to teach myself a lot of this stuff. And I think that's going to be a big hit in terms of smart people being able to live up to their potential, is the lack of mentoring opportunities. And look, the other way around too, right? If you're a smart guy and you've got like a lot of experience and skills that you want to pass on to other people, if you're significantly smarter than the average person, you can't mentor other people, because it's going to go right over their head. I mean, you can try a little bit, but I mean, there's limits, right, to what people can do. So in certain cases, it's just going to be knowledge that dies with you if you can't find find those people that are able to be competent enough to transfer that knowledge to. And so that's one of the many reasons that we need to build communities of smart people, because if you're walking around the general public, I mean, it's just people are getting stupider every year. And I didn't used to notice it quite as much, because, like, again, I'm not going to play the whole I'm so smart that, but on there's a little bit of truth to the fact, like, that I'm above the norm, right? And so I would always notice that, okay, not everyone's going to be on the same page, right? It's okay. But now it's like, it is becoming a struggle. It's becoming a struggle to it's no longer just like, oh, they're just normies. It's like, no, they're like retards. Like this, I can handle normies. I can't handle this, whatever this is. So, that's another reason for making communities. Someone keeps saying, put my books in a depository. I don't know what that even is supposed to mean. My book is at Barnes and Noble. You can buy a copy and put it wherever you want, I guess. How much are we allowed to help each other with the secret message? Can we link a book to Roman era World War II ciphers to help people after a week, or is helping against the rules? I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. I wouldn't help people out just because it's not like it goes away. It's on BitChute. They can go back and find. And plus, I told everyone exactly how to decipher it. It's not like a secret. It's just, it's not that. Now today's gets a little more complicated. Not much more, but it starts slowly going in the direction of not just as simple as the last few have been. Today's is the first slightly more complicated message, is all I'm going to say. Slightly more complicated. Let's see here. I struggle with advanced machine learning concepts. Am I a retarded normie? I don't know. Probably not. 56% face moment. Same page. Book depository is a shop. Again, like I said, I can't just put my book in shops. It is what it is. It's sold at Barnes & Noble because that's the only place it can be sold. And if and when it gets banned from Barnes & Noble, it'll only be able to be sold at I'll have to, I don't know, find a way, you know. It's like one of those things like, why are you using Trovo? Why is BitChute? But we're doing what we can. There's just not a lot of options. When it was on Amazon, you used to be able to look up, like you could go to, well, in fact, you go to, I mean, I'm sure if you go to Barnes and Noble, you could order it or something, but yeah, I can't just decide that they stock it. That's them. They're not going to just start stocking my book. Let's see here. I have the secret messages posted on Minds. You rat. You dirty rat. The FBI are nothing but a woke version of the Stasi. How much do you want to bet that in the next 10 years the FBI will be portrayed in films like their shit doesn't... Well, they already... What are you talking about? Will be. When is the FBI ever portrayed as bad? You know, I guess there, from time to time there's a movie where they kind of, you know, they have a bad guy, right? But there's almost never... I mean, I guess maybe X-Files kind of, right? A little bit. But, I mean, you know, that's so out there, it's kind of irrelevant. They're talking about fucking aliens and shit, right? But generally speaking, the federal government, if there's ever like a bad guy in the ruling class in a film, it's an isolated thing. And the good guys in the government find out and they arrest him and then they drain the swamp, basically. And every single, even like when there's like a horrific super plot to fuck over Americans, the good guys in the federal government end up sniffing it out and rooting it out. And at the end, you know, they're in jail. There's almost not, in fact, there's none that I can think of. There's not a single movie that I can think of where the federal government is seen in anything other than, you know, maybe a flawed, but the best you could ever really expect to get out of humans anyway, kind of an organization, right? Where everyone's trying at least, and maybe there's a few bad apples, but, you know, overall it's good. And that's true of even when you're talking about films that portray the federal government doing terrible things. It's like I said, it's always like this rogue faction that ends up being found out and punished. But we all know that's not at all how it works. I watched the Kay Griggs interview and the Ted Gunderson speech. Do you think what she said about the CIA being a veneer for Army intelligence is true? I don't remember the specifics of what she said about that, but you got to remember the CIA did originate from OSS, from military intelligence, so they are related. Let's see here. Usually it's only a corrupt element. The institution obviously is never painted in a bad light. Exactly. More often than not, the FBI is portrayed as law enforcement agency that comes in to clean up when the incompetent local police screw up. Yeah, they're always shown as good guys. You know, and like again, they might have a rogue bad agent, but it's never. And by the way, that applies to local police as well. There's very few movies. There's a couple that exist where they have like, oh, this particular police, you know, this sheriff's office or whatever got corrupt. But at the end, the same thing. In the end of the movie, they clean it up. Like that, what's that movie, Copland or whatever, with Sylvester Stallone, where there's the corrupt town where all the cops live, and you know. But in the end, what happens, right? It gets cleaned up. In a lot of films, TV shows, and video games, especially Splinter Cell, it is shown that the government has to bend to the rules or even break them. But like the show 24, right, with Jack Bauer, where you know he was always doing edgy things. And by the way, that was to normalize torture. That was 100% to get the public on board with the illegal shit that they were doing in regards to the Middle East. Yeah, Abu Ghraib type stuff, right? And, you know, whatever, you can have your opinion on that, but it doesn't change the fact that the reason I know this, I'm not just saying this because, oh, there was this TV show that showed the anti-terrorism group as like these superheroes. That much is obvious enough. But in concert, I watched because at the time when this show was like a thing, this is a long time ago now. And so I still listened to talk radio because that was still a thing too, I guess. And I watched as inexplicably Rush Limbaugh was pushing like the box set of DVDs for 24. He might have even interviewed like the guy who played Jack Bauer. And in the same week, Sean Hannity did the same thing. Talked about how much he loved the show. In the same week, Mark Levin, Michael Medved, Dennis Prager, you know, all the Zionists were promoting this show like all at the same time. And I remember thinking like, well, this is obviously like a push, you know, but it's weird because I thought the right didn't like Hollywood. Why is the right pushing this Hollywood product? But I only wondered that for a minute. It wasn't that hard to, you know, calculate the answer to that question. Let's see here. '24 premiere was delayed because 9/11. Oh, I don't know. I never watched 24. It was never my thing. Is your ham shack EMP and lightning hardened? EMP, yes. Lightning, not so much, because I need to find a lightning arrestor that can handle. Well, I guess technically I don't need one of these. My amp's broken, but like once my amp is working, I will need a lightning arrestor that can handle that kind of power. For decades, the right has had a scary meme that most everyone believed, even whites, the gun-toting white militia types that would race war or rise up against the government if things ever got really out of control or out of hand. The left knocked that paper tiger over this summer, ties into the rules for radicals. Yeah, no, I said this in a previous stream. When you talk about militias, generally speaking, they're just a bunch of, it's a social club. It's a bunch of guys that like guns. They like complaining about liberals. And that's pretty much the end of it. Now, that could and probably would have changed had, just as an example, if Trump really had wanted an insurrection. So this is the big frustrating thing about the characterization of what happened on the 6th. If Trump really had wanted an insurrection, like an actual coup, for example, to happen on the 6th, it would have happened. It would have happened. But he would have had to have explicitly, or at least more explicitly than what they're saying he did to start what amounts to, again, just a protest that got slightly out of hand. But if he had explicitly asked for a uprising, it would have happened. Very few presidents could have pulled off that, but Trump was one of them. And his failure to do so, after saying that the election was stolen by an usurper, is one of the bigger things that stands out when realizing that Trump was one of the worst presidents this country's ever had. And certainly, I'd say one of the weakest. Because he did have that power, and if he believed what he said about the election being stolen, he had that responsibility. But he doesn't want to. Why would he upset things? He's going to be, whatever, however this impeachment goes down, it doesn't matter. He's going to be fine, right? These people have too much to risk, and they don't have principles. Their principles really can be summed up as they want comfort. And Trump is accustomed to a level of comfort that you and I will never experience. And he was not willing to lower that comfort level and risk possible discomfort. And he's still getting impeached now because, well, I don't know if they'll convict him, but whatever. One major thing to remember: a man can die 3 times. The first is in his heart when he gives up. No one cries for this man's death, or for no mother grieves for her coward son. The second, when he draws his last breath. The third, when his name trumps or what he fought and died for is spoken. I don't know what you're saying. That sounds very long. Let's see here. Threats were made to his wealth and his future of his kids. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the game. And if that's all it takes for you to not do your duty as president, you shouldn't be president. Simply, simple as that. Especially if you have he has the means. Yeah, sure, his children will not be able to live the setting lifestyle and be these, billionaire faggots all over the place, but it's not as if Trump couldn't keep his family safe. He has. I can keep my family safe. If I have a heads up, if I know, even if it's the fucking feds trying to murder my family, right? Like if I find out for some reason, all right, you got a week, and then there's gonna be a hit put on your mom, I could make sure that she wouldn't have a very exciting life afterwards, but I could make sure she wasn't killed. I have the means to do that. You better believe fucking Trump could, they might have to stay in some kind of lame underground bunker or something, right? For the rest of their lives, or who knows. It's comfort. It's comfort and status. Comfort and status was more important to them than doing the right thing. So he had no business being in the Oval Office in the first place. There's no way you can convince me of otherwise, because it's just, there's no argument for that. All right, guys, we're going to do the secret message. And again, like I said, the secret message today is slightly more complicated than prior secret messages. And that's all I'm going to say. It's not, well, that's all I'm going to say. We're going to be moving into the direction of complexity. And this is the first step into that realm. And so here you go with the secret message.
Warning. If you are not authorized to receive this message, or if you are wearing headphones, you are advised to temporarily reduce the volume of this transmission. If this is a recording of the previous transmission, you may advance the timeline by approximately 1 minute.
You have been chosen to receive a secret Blackpilled transmission. Stand by for secret pillbox message transmission. Transmission will commence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Transmission begin. Transmission complete.
All right. So now you guys have the secret message. The secret message. Okay, so today is Friday, officially. I hope you guys have a wonderful Friday evening. And I'll see you guys again on Saturday. And I'll have a possibly more complicated secret message on Saturday. We'll see. Or maybe not. In the meantime, highly recommend, like I said, check out if you can, go on YouTube and just watch, if you have, if you are so inclined, just watch some of the actual footage of this guy, Saul Alinsky. Because you can get his book, like I said, you can get his book, audiobook, might even be on YouTube, in fact. And it's worth a listen. Absolutely. Some of it's going to be outdated. But it historically, from a historic standpoint, it's worth a listen just so you can see kind of how the left did leverage a lot of these tactics in order to get to where they're at today. But also, just if you look at the way that this guy interacts, when these are his allies a lot of times. And he's just cold, calculating, and just kind of a real sociopath. But you get, there are still some hard truths. Some hard truths in terms of how the world actually does work and how power actually works. And while it might make you feel dirty, and it might make you feel uncomfortable, that's the nature of war. No one's supposed to feel comfortable with war. And we are in a war right now. It's not a, I wonder if there's going to be, no, it's already started. It's already started. I don't know if it'll ever evolve in such a way that it becomes something a little more conventional, but it's already started. It's already begun. And with that, for Blackpilled, I am, of course,
Felon, gangster, mafiotic, negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable, the blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney, Nassau County, and watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious, lowly, sodomistic display by the felon, sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau.